Absolute unit tanks. Bigger is better, or so the saying goes, and some tank designers took this to heart. As tanks played an increasingly vital role on the battlefield, some would be designed with speed or durability in mind. Some, however, did away with any subtlety and can only be described as absolute units. The Jagdtiger. As the Second World War dragged on, German forces found themselves on the defensive, facing down heavy tanks such as the Soviet KV-1. German leadership looked for new ways to combat the growing threat of Allied armor. They were eager to place the massive 128mm Pak-44 anti-tank gun onto a mobile platform. In 1942, development began on a vehicle for mounting such a large main gun. After success using the Panther hull for a tank destroyer, the Jagdpanther, the same would be done with the hull of the King Tiger. After testing, production began in 1944. Known as the Jagdtiger, or Hunting Tiger, the vehicle was originally classified as an assault gun, but due to bickering within the German military, it would eventually be classified as a Panzerjäger, or tank destroyer. The Jagdtiger was the largest tracked vehicle to participate in the Second World War, weighing in at a colossal 71 metric tons. It featured frontal casemate armor, almost 10 inches thick, much more than the tanks it was designed to hunt, and all but impervious to Allied tanks. While formidable on paper, in reality the Jagdtiger's performance was underwhelming. The biggest issue was the engine, the same type used in the Tiger II, an already woefully underpowered engine for a vehicle that weighed just under 70 metric tons. Breakdowns were common as it struggled to propel the behemoth, and more were lost in this way than in enemy action, forcing crews to abandon the vehicles. Production of the Jagdtiger was complex and difficult to build, and of the 150 ordered, only around half were made. Today, only 3 survive intact, one each in the United States, Russia, and Great Britain, all museum pieces. Ever dreamed of ruling the world? Too bad real life doesn't work that way, but with Call of War, it totally does. Command secret weapons like tanks, planes, and even the dreaded rubber duck of doom. Just kidding, it's a nuclear bomb. Declare war on your neighbors, or don't. Who am I to tell you how to run your imaginary empire? And the best part? You can do it while sitting on the toilet. Oh yeah, that's right. It works on both PC and mobile, so say goodbye to your productivity. And because we're such nice imaginary warlords, here's an exclusive gift. Click the link in the description to get 13,000 gold and a 1-month premium subscription for free. But remember, this offer is about as short-lived as your peace treaties, so get in on this Call of War action. Strategize like a pro or wing it like me and take over the world. Now, hurry up and click the link in the description for your freebies, because unlike my New Year's resolution, this offer won't last more than 30 days. The GW Tiger P. The Jagdtiger wasn't the only heavy vehicle planned by the Wehrmacht. Once again, using the Tiger chassis as the basis, a vehicle was designed to carry long-range indirect artillery pieces. The Geschützwagen Tiger, or GW Tiger P, was a planned self-propelled howitzer of massive proportions, whose initial concept dates back as far as 1942. Though incomplete, it tipped the scales at an impressive 58 metric tons, without any cannon or other mounted weaponry, and with thin armor of a little over an inch thick. As a howitzer, heavy armor would be unnecessary. What made the Geschützwagen Tiger more impressive was the length, which could vary between a lengthy 36 feet up to an astounding 43 feet, depending on the planned variant. For comparison, a Tiger I was just under 28 feet in length, including the main gun. The GW Tiger P was a modular design and could have carried 2 different artillery pieces, either a 170mm cannon or a 210mm mortar. Both were standalone artillery pieces already in use by the Wehrmacht. There were also potential plans for a 305mm mortar version. The Geschützwagen Tiger never saw combat, as the first prototype was incomplete when it was captured in 1945 by Allied forces. The 44M Tash. Hungary was suffering heavy casualties at the hands of the Soviet Union, and by 1943 it was clear that the tanks employed by the Hungarian armed forces were woefully inadequate against the Soviet T-34s and KV-1s. A new tank was needed in order to match these highly effective adversaries on the battlefield. The Hungarian military at first sought manufacturing rights from Germany to produce Panzer IV and V tanks, but Germany refused. As a result, in August 1943, Hungarian engineers set to work creating a new tank from scratch that could compete on the modern battlefield. The outcome of this planning was the 44M Tasch, inspired by the German Panther tank. Two prototypes were made, one made out of mild steel, and a so-called finalized version with full armor-plated superstructure. The 44M Tasch was more thickly armored than its Panther counterpart, with frontal hull armor plating 120 mm or just under 5 inches thick, compared to the Panther I's 80 mm or 3.1 inches. The turret of the Tasch was a blocky, octagonal structure that was intended to contain a large 80mm L-58 anti-aircraft gun, modified for use on the tank. When this proved unfeasible, the main armament was switched to the 43M 75mm L-43 cannon. Though the Tasch has a very blocky and intimidating silhouette, it only weighed in at 38 metric tons, which in most militaries would classify it as a medium tank. Due to a quirk in the Hungarian military's classification system, any tank, regardless of size, that carried a main gun 75mm or larger would be classified as a heavy tank. While engineering issues with the Tasch were being ironed out, there were also plans for the Tasch Rohamloveg, a mobile assault gun. Details are sparse, but apparently the Rohamloveg was based on the Jagdpanther assault gun, and it was rumored to have a lower profile and sleeker appearance than its German counterpart. And potentially it could have been equipped with a massive 88mm main gun, which would have been capable of ripping through Allied armor with impunity. The factory where the Tasch prototypes were being developed was hit by an Allied bombing raid in 1944, destroying everything. Before any development could resume, Soviet forces had advanced into Hungary, and the 44M Tasch was never completed, and the Rohamloveg never left the drawing board, ending a fascinating chapter in tank development. The TOG-2. By the time of the Second World War, tanks had undergone significant development. The mobile nature of the conflict required tanks that could move rapidly, using speed to their advantage. There were some, however, who still envisioned tank formations in their original role, breaking through the trench lines of the First World War. In 1939, with this in mind, Britain's Special Vehicle Development Committee designed a super heavy tank intended for trench warfare. Two prototypes were tested, both named TOG, a reference to the nickname given to the people who had worked on tanks during the previous conflict, the Old Gang. But the TOG-1 was soon scrapped. The TOG-2, however, came to life as a behemoth of a vehicle. The 33-foot-long TOG-2 tipped the scales, literally. Only half of the vehicle could be weighed at a time, totaling 81 metric tons. Due to its colossal size, the 600-horsepower engine propelled the tank at a top speed of only 8.5 miles per hour. Armament was a 17-pounder cannon and a single 7.92mm Besa machine gun. Protection came in the form of about 3 inches of armor plating. The boxy design and large frame would have made the TOG-2 an easy target for the enemy, and the nearly vertical armor would have made it vulnerable to anti-tank weaponry. The TOG-2 was outdated from the beginning, designed for a war that was long over. Testing ran from 1941 to 1943. However, it was apparent that such a tank was no longer needed and the project was halted. The TOG-2 avoided the fate of its counterpart, remaining intact and is on display at the Tank Museum in Bovington, Great Britain, and is the heaviest vehicle in their collection. A39 Tortoise. The TOG-2 wasn't the only giant tank on the drawing board. In 1943, expecting to face heavy German defenses such as the Siegfried Line, British planners ordered the development of a specialized assault vehicle designed to breach enemy fortifications, no matter how extensive they were. After some debate, one design out of 18 proposals was selected. 25 vehicles were ordered, and it was hoped that they would be ready for the battlefield by September 1945. Eventually, the order was reduced to 6. Designated the A39 Tortoise, the gargantuan vehicle lived up to its name. Foregoing mobility in favor of protection, the majority of the Tortoise's 79 metric tons was armor plating, almost 9 inches thick in some places, and able to shrug off virtually anything that could be thrown at it. As it was designed to break through the heavy defenses, the Tortoise can also dish out impressive punishment as well, the main gun being a huge 32-pounder cannon. As expected from such a titanic vehicle, the Tortoise's greatest weakness was mobility. Its 600-horsepower engine could only move it at a top speed of 12 miles per hour. Transportation was another issue. It required 2 heavy haulage trucks to move from place to place, and could not cross any mobile bridge in the British arsenal without the structure breaking. By the time the Tortoise was ready for use, however, the war was over, ending the project. Of the 6 vehicles made, 4 were scrapped. 2 still remain. One at Kirkcudbright, Scotland. The other resides at the Bovington Tank Museum, where it remains in working order, the second heaviest vehicle in the collection. After World War II, the idea of heavy tanks faded, as military planners adopted the idea of multi-role main battle tanks, leaving these absolute units relics of the past.